I have said repeatedly that I intend to close Guantanamo, and I will follow through on that.
Welcome back. We're talking about the U.S. facility at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. The Naval Station is well known for its prison, a prison that houses suspected terrorists awaiting trial. U.S. President Barack Obama promised to close the facility after his election in 2008. It remains open today. But the administration said this week plans to close it are being drafted.
It is a priority of the president. He believes it's in our clear national security interest for us to close the prison at Guantanamo Bay.
Well, still with me to explore the future of Guantanamo Bay is Cuban journalist Carlos Iglesias. Joining us now from the U.S. state of Ohio is Carlos Warner, a federal defense attorney who's defended Guantanamo Bay prisoners. And J.D. Gordon is with us in the studio. He is a former Pentagon spokesman and retired Navy commander. Thanks to all of you for joining us. J.D., let me start with you for this part of the show. You believe that Guantanamo should not be closed. Why?
Anand, thanks for having me on the show. I think Guantanamo should remain open until we have a better system in place to take care of the detainees there. Right now, there are 116 detainees, and about half of them are held in an indefinite detention status, which means that if they were moved to the United States, the judges would decide if they remain locked up or not the president. So I think until we have a better system in place, we can keep dangerous enemy combatants locked up during wartime, then Guantanamo should remain open until then.
All right, let me put those points to Carlos Warner. Prisoners should stay on Guantanamo until we have a better system, Carlos Warner. If they're brought to the mainland here, then federal judges can free them. What do you make of that?
That's not accurate. First of all, to break them down the way that your guest has is just completely inaccurate. The bottom line is that over half these men are completely innocent. The other ones cannot be charged. You have 7 individuals charged right now. So if the president does follow through with his promise, it'll be simple. We have to repatriate the people, send them away, the ones that have been cleared. Some are going to have to come to the U.S. The military commissions will have to end, and there'll be another system. And I ask a question, what's wrong with a federal judge determining that individuals who are innocent should be released? That's what happens in the United States. It's a misnomer to say these are the worst of the worst. As people on the right have been saying that for years. It's just not true. It's been proven in courts over and over again, but that's the tagline that the right likes to use.
Okay, JD, let me give you a chance to respond to that.
Well, spoken like a true defense attorney. He's representing his clients as he should, but I think his statements are false. Judges will have the authority to decide whether they remain locked up or not, and we're talking about bin Laden bodyguards, bomb makers,
yeah, but the point
suicide.
is, don't judges have that authority?
They do have the authority. Absolutely, they have the authority. That's why I think if you look at Al-Mari v. Bush, we look at case law in the United States, what's happened before. In Al-Mari v. Bush, Al-Mari was a Qatari national who was a green card holder, and President Bush locked him up because we thought he was a sleeper cell agent for Al-Qaeda who was going to poison reservoirs. However, President Bush lost in court. Al-Mari won. Basically, Bush had said we can lock Al-Mari up in the Charleston brig for an indefinite amount of time. Bush lost. Al-Mari basically was transferred to a civilian court system where the only thing they got him on was credit card fraud. It's sort of like getting Al Capone for tax evasion. He's a free man in Qatar right now. Al-Mari is a free man. That's what would happen to about half the Gitmo detainees.
It's because the government could not prove the allegations in court beyond a reasonable doubt, and they can't be proven against these men. If the government has the proof, let's have trials, and let's do it in federal court. Let's not forget that every person that this administration has brought to federal court for prosecution has not only been convicted, but is now serving a life sentence in the Supermax prison. So when they have the proof, they bring them and they try them. There's no proof against these men. That's the problem. Now, you do have the 9/11 individuals, the other people who are charged there, in a kangaroo court, the military commissions, which has failed, which has been proposed by the Pentagon, which it's been how many years, and the 9/11 victims see no justice. They should be in federal court as well. If the government can prove that these individuals are terrorists, prove it. That's what we do in the United States.
Okay, let's get back to the future of the prison on Guantanamo Bay. Let me bring in Carlos Iglesias. Carlos Iglesias, are there any circumstances under which Cuba may agree to the continued presence of the United States at Guantanamo Bay? Perhaps under different circumstances, perhaps they shut the prison down, but the United States remains there.
Well, let's make clear that there are two matters here, the prison and the naval base. Cuba has shared the international community position that the prison must be closed, and agrees with President Obama about that. But that's a problem for President Obama. I think that the base is another problem. I think that the base will be a long-lasting issue in the Cuban-American policy, although Cuba has a very pragmatic position. It was stated on the so-called Baraguá Oath in February 19, 2000, and let me read and resume that position. It means, at due time, as it is not a priority at this moment, although it is fair and irrevocable right of our people, the territory illegally occupied in Guantanamo must be returned to Cuba. That's the position Cuba has standed for long time ago, and I think it will continue with this point of view.
JD, President Obama, who wants to close Guantanamo Bay, he said that, look, these are his words, a national imperative. It fuels anti-American sentiment and wastes money.
I had a column in The Hill last week about what President Obama doesn't want us to know about Gitmo closure, and that was primarily referencing the detainees in the United States, how judges could set them free. However, I also mentioned in that column in The Hill that I believe President Obama is so desperate to close the prison because he wants to return the base to Cuba. I think that if you look around the international left, particularly in Latin America, they call Guantanamo a sign of Yankee imperialism. That's the empire. I think President Obama is sympathetic to that view. I think that's why he wants to close the prison, let the chips fall where they may, so he can actually give the base back to the Cuban government.
But we don't know that. There's no evidence to say that he's going to hand it back.
That's ridiculous.
Well, the only evidence we have is that the White House has not been honest with the American people. If you look at Ben Rhodes from the National Security Council, he went to Canada last year in secret, behind our backs, behind the backs of Congress, to negotiate this secret deal with the Cubans for normalization of relations. So there's no evidence that says he's going to give it back. However, if you look at their track record, they have not been honest with the American people.
Okay, Carlos Warner, you wanted to respond to that.
Well, yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, first of all, let me respond to Mr. Iglesias. 100 years ago, it made sense for American interests. 50 years ago, it made sense. Today, it makes no sense. We have plenty of places where we can keep our troops in the Caribbean. That being said, we have invested billions of dollars in that base. I don't see, the prison must go, we all, except for Mr. Gordon, agree on that, but I don't see any way that we would give that land back. And I think that that's going to be a major diplomatic problem between Cuba and the United States in years to come, because we normally don't house troops in a foreign country against their will. That being said, the administration has been very clear that they're not going to give it back, and I being there as many times that I have, I mean, just seeing the infrastructure there, I just don't think they're going to do it. Should they do it? Yes. There are no signs on the right or the left that that's going to occur.
Right, and Carlos Warner, how much of this is politics? I mean, you know, to help our viewers around the world understand this, the president has promised to close down this facility, this prison. Why has it been so difficult?
Well, it's been Congress really has been a major block. Now, the president did for several years, really between 2010, 2012, he had the authority to transfer many men, and he chose not to do so. After 2012, 2013, when we had hunger strikes, he redoubled his efforts. The bottom line is that right now Congress is blocking any of these individuals from coming to the United States. The president can transfer them to foreign countries with the approval of the Pentagon. But he will have to fight in Congress this winter in order to get a law passed saying that they can come to the U.S. And that's the only way that he'll actually be able to close the base, because there will be individuals, especially the ones that are in the military commissions, that the government does intend to try. So the block has come from the right. It comes with the same taglines that your guest is using. The bottom line is that they are undercut by the facts when the American public can get into Guantanamo and see who's there. They are not the worst of the worst. In fact, they are many times the most innocent ones, and they're the ones that have no country to go to. Those are the people that are being held in Guantanamo, the majority of them today.
JD, has this become a political football, especially in Congress?
Absolutely, yes. It's been a political football since it was opened, actually. I think that it's important to realize, though, that nearly a third of the detainees who left Guantanamo are confirmed or suspected by our intelligence agencies as returning to terrorism. And also, the Chinese have had this problem, too. They had the Uyghurs. We had several Uyghurs who are separatists fighting China as well. China's also familiar with this problem. I think it's important also to realize that the cost that President Obama says is deliberately inflated. President Obama says it's $3 million a year per detainee. He uses the cost as the argument. However, the reason it's so expensive is because we have 2,000 troops guarding just 116 detainees.
Yeah, but there is another cost that the president talks about, and that is anti-American sentiment. He also said that this is used, others have said, as a recruitment tool for terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda.
Well, 9/11 happened before Gitmo was opened. The Cole bombing happened before Gitmo. We've been attacked by radical Islam since the 1970s. Every single U.S. president has been reactive. So basically, we're at war right now. Carlos Warner may not realize that. He thinks this is a police action, but it's not. We're at war. We're fighting for our survival. Just a few people can kill thousands. So on 9/11, that was only 19 people that killed 3,000 people. So we need a better system to replace Guantanamo. We don't have it yet.
Well, if I could respond, first of all, we're no longer at war in Afghanistan, allegedly, yet we're still holding these people. So the president has said that, and the fact is that we're not at war. Your guest, once again, refers to these recidivism factors. There's been many straight-up studies, not the ones from the Pentagon, from reputable sources. We're talking CNN, Peter Berger. He's saying that it's about a 6% or an 8% recidivism rate. Don't forget that our U.S. government has said that some of the people we transferred to Qatar, the Taliban, they, quote, returned to the battle. That was what some people on the right were saying. You know what happened? They were calling their family. That's their definition of returning to the battle. So you have a push from the many forces in the Pentagon. You have the push for the right to keep it open because guess what? It gets votes. People in the United States, half of them think it's closed. The other half think, oh, let's keep the worst of the worst there. But those are not the facts. And your guest keeps putting on, saying things that just are completely false.
All right, let me go back to Carlos Iglesias in Havana. And Carlos, is there any international legal recourse that Cuba could go to? I mean, could it refer this to, say, an international tribunal?
I think that I told you, I don't agree with the commander that President Obama wants to return the base to Cuba. I think he wants to close the prison, which is another subject. The naval base is a long-term policy affair between Cuba and the United States. I believe the United States is not ready yet to return the base because the Secretary of Defense, Carter, recently said that it would not be a return. So who to believe? The official statements or some rumors or speculations? I have the impression that Cuba will continue to stay with the Barawa Us, that this is not a priority now, but it is a right for the Cuban people to demand the return of the Guantanamo naval base territory illegally occupied by the U.S. Navy.
Carlos Iglesias in Havana, Carlos Warner in Ohio, J.D. Gordon with me here in the studio. Thanks to all of you for joining us. That's all we have time for, but the conversation continues online. Check out our webpage dedicated to the latest news from Cuba at cuba.cctv-america.com. And be sure to tune in right here at 7 p.m. Eastern in the U.S. on Sunday, August 9th for our documentary, Reinventing Cuba. I'm Arnold Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being with us.